Welcome once again to Parks and Conversation, a rewatch celebration of the NBC classic Parks and Recreation. Directed by, created by, starring all kinds of fun people. But this is all part of the Mike Schur universe, which is a wonderful world of comedic gold. And my name is Jason, and I'm joined by my friend Jeremy. Say hello, Jeremy.
Hello, Jeremy.
I get it.
6 episodes. I had to do at least once.
Eventually, it was going to happen,
Yeah.
and I'm just proud of you that you waited this long.
I did. It was a lot of restraint. But now with only 19 episodes left, I don't have to do it ever again.
I know. That's great. Thank you.
We have that to look forward to.
I appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 6, which is called The Rock Show. And it's the season finale. And I love this episode so much. And as I was preparing and reading about this particular episode, what was amazing to me was it was the lowest viewed and highest reviewed by critics.
Yeah.
So like the fewest number of people watched it, but this was the critics finally saying they figured it out, which I think is pretty great. So what are your impressions as you watch this episode? Just off the bat, what did you feel like as a season finale? It's a short season, but as a season finale, what did you think about this episode?
I thought it was great. It didn't really feel like a big cliffhanger season finale, honestly, but it definitely felt like they finally hit their stride with their characters and kind of how they're balancing the characters' work life and then their social life as well. There is so many great jokes in this one, and I read a quote that this was the episode that they felt like they had finally eliminated the comparison to The Office, and that they're really finding their own tone. And this really sets up so much of Parks and Recreation moving forward. And that's another reason why I really love this episode too. It's because it's hard to view it objectively, watching all the other episodes, and now you really get to see where this show's going to go, which I thought was really fun. What did you think?
Well, I agree with you. It was a great picture of our friends in Pawnee, Indiana, getting to know them a little bit better. We met some new characters, learned some important things about some existing characters. And if this show did not get picked up for a second season, like it would have felt like a good ending the way the season ended. Because we can get into the end, but I felt like, well, this is actually a pretty good, like if they get canceled, this is a pretty good end to this cancellation. Like it ends with some optimism with Leslie and her determination and some transformation in her as a character as well, which I really appreciated. So
yeah,
let me give a quick synopsis, just off the top of my dome, what this episode is about.
Do it.
Andy is going to get his casts removed from both of his legs.
Finally.
And as a part of the celebration, he is inviting people to a rock show that his band, currently named Scarecrow Boat, is performing. And that's one stream is the rock show. Another stream is Leslie is set up on a date that she doesn't know is a date, but it is. And so that those two streams are in tension throughout this episode. And so that's kind of the main arc of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Did I leave anything important out for a synopsis?
No, I think you nailed it.
All right, perfect. So right off the bat, the cold open is the gang. We've got Tom, Ann, Leslie, Andy, and Dr. Harris in the cold open. And Dr. Harris is arguably one of the best portrayals of a doctor that I've ever seen. Just so like matter of fact, I don't care. All human bodies are just meat bags walking around. That's basically the Dr. Harris vibe. So I think I nailed it.
And you're all idiots. Like I am the smartest guy in the room.
Exactly. Yeah. So So I don't know why Tom is at this, really. Because Tom's not friends with Andy.
Right. Well, and not only that, but he has a stethoscope in the opening shot. I'm like, where did he get that? Like, why does he have, I don't know. Who did he talk out of their stethoscope?
Tom, as we'll see, Tom is a shopaholic. So he might just have one later on in the series. We'll see he has some very interesting shopping habits.
It's true.
So he got it from Sky Mall.
Yeah, he was like, you know what? Hey, we're going to the hospital. Today's the day. I got to wear my stethoscope. Yeah.
So Tom is always prepared for what he needs to least be prepared for.
Right.
So Andy goes and gets his cast off, and they open it up. Have you ever broken a bone?
I have. I've had a large body cast myself, actually.
On your leg?
All the way from my toes up to my chest. I broke my femur when I was 12 years old, and I had a body cast.
Are you joking?
I'm not joking at all.
It went all the way up to your chest?
Yeah.
Come on.
Let's talk about it.
How does that even work?
They create, like, you know how you have those pajamas with the flaps in them? They make casts kind of the same way. If that's what you're wondering.
That is, yeah. I'm very confused. We're friends, and this is the first I'm hearing about this.
Let's talk about it on the internet.
What other health concerns? Do you have family photos of this? Can you prove this?
Oh, probably.
I need to see this.
Probably somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. My mom had to make special shorts that snapped on the sides, just so I wasn't.
That's amazing.
I wasn't wearing a blanket all the time.
You didn't have to just walk around in a Homer Simpson muumuu?
No, I couldn't walk around. I was in a bed for several months because I went through what Andy went through basically. And there's a joke where he's like, oh, I can't wait to walk, and he falls. That's a real thing. That is absolutely real. So there were, and when they said it's like a sweaty piñata when they opened it up, it's true. There were objects in my cast, not to the amount of Andy's, but there was some stuff in there. I think there was a couple M&Ms for sure. There definitely was one scratch stick that I lost. It was like one of those skewer, like a skewer. It's itchy. It's hard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh man,
ask me anything. I'll tell you.
Well, I don't want to know too much.
Okay.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I've never broken a bone in my life, and so I've never had a cast, and so I was I genuinely had no idea that this was a part of your experience. So, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I was going to ask, did you find stuff in there? And so, yeah, some candy and some scratch sticks.
Mm-hmm. That was about it.
You didn't find your iPod or your pirate?
No, they weren't invented at the time. Although I did, out of this whole thing, that's when I got my Game Boy. I think that's when my parents and my grandparents kind of pooled together and were like, hey, this guy is going crazy. He's driving us crazy. Get him something to occupy his time. And that's when I was just able to, play video games for the very first time in my life. So, yeah.
Wow. So, at least something good came out of it.
Exactly, right? I'd do it again if I had to. Totally worth it.
I'm sorry. That was my wife is texting me. That was a text. Sorry. Wow. I'm just blown away by what I just learned. So I don't know what to say about it.
It's okay. You can, circle back to it. We can talk about it later. Not a problem.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we hang out, so it'll come up again.
Sure.
All right. So Leslie, though, as part of this, she also wants to keep the cast. Did you keep your cast?
I did not. I kept not to get too graphic, but because of the femur, I was in traction, and that means that they had to actually put a screw through kind of like right below my knee, and then hang my leg. It's a whole thing. I got to keep the bolt that went through my leg, which I thought was cool.
Wow, you still have it?
I do somewhere. Yeah, it's in a baggie somewhere.
That's good. That's a good place to store that. A baggie somewhere.
It is medical waste at that point, I think. So
yeah. Wow. Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow, man, we learned so much today. This is fantastic.
I feel I feel so much closer to you, internet.
Yeah. Wow. All our internet friends.
Yeah.
So Andy gets up and is like, it's going to feel so good to walk. And he falls right over. Mm-hmm. And so that's a real thing that you experienced as well.
Yeah. Your muscles atrophy, that you get weaker because you don't use them. So much like, I could really empathize with how Sandra Bullock felt at the end of Gravity. It's like, I was basically an astronaut in a sense because my muscles atrophy too.
I totally get it. You were an astronaut.
Yeah.
Yeah. The closest thing I have to this is one time when I was in high school, I got out of bed and I was in a rush. Like I slept in. I was like, oh crap, I gotta go. And I swing my feet around and both of my feet were asleep. And I just stood up real fast and fell right over because I didn't have any feeling in my toes and my feet. And I just fell over. And that's a scary feeling.
Yeah.
When it's like, I can't support my own weight anymore. I don't know what's happening.
Does it ever happen like after like you go to the bathroom for a long time, like you sit for a long time and then like you lose all the feeling in your legs? Is that just me? Is that just me?
I've never lost all the feeling in my legs from that experience, but my feet have fallen asleep. Yes.
There you go. All right. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. We've definitely covered some bases here. So, so that's the cold open. Credits happen. They go to a party in the patio where they're eating cake, and it's like a field because they're trying to build a park for the Parks and Rec. They're eating cake, and Andy's inviting everybody. Hey, come to my show. And
did you see the pigeon on the cake?
Yes,
yeah, that was great.
They've cut around but nowhere near where the pigeon is at, and the pigeon doesn't seem to care.
No, it's on the teeter-totter. It's having a great time.
Yeah, it's like, this is a great pigeon park.
Yeah.
So,
that's edible.
Totally edible. So the and as she's talking about Andy like getting out back into the world, and writing a bunch of songs, he just writes songs that are about things that are close to him. Those are some of the best songs that I've ever heard, especially The Lamp. I wish you were the lamp, the kind of lamp that lit up when you were touched. That's a good song, man.
That's a good song. Yeah.
And at this scene as well, Andy is trying to explain his music. And as somebody who used to be in a band, I totally get what Andy is trying to do, because you don't want to say, oh yeah, we sound just like this. Right. Or we're just rock music, because you feel, even though your band might be, the technical term is hot garbage, you feel like it's very important and very special, and it's hard to box it in. And so Andy's trying to talk about all this stuff, and he says, he gives all kinds of comparisons to different bands, and Tom says, oh, so like rock music. Well, no, not really. And April talks to Andy directly and says, I totally understand what you're talking about. And this is the first time April talks directly to Andy in the entire series. And so that's an important moment for the future.
It is. It changes the trajectory of a huge chunk of the show. Yeah.
Right. And so this is where, they're talking about the thing, and Leslie's like, oh, I want to go so bad, but I've got this important meeting that my mom set up with the planning commissioner of Eagleton. And so there's that tension point. She really wants to go, but she's also dedicated to her work. So that classic Leslie.
I love that she calls it a tete-a-tete.
Right. Yeah.
It's a summit. It's so important.
Well, it's two representatives of city governments from two different cities coming together to solve the problems that the world needs solved in this small town in Indiana.
They're making things happen.
And its neighboring town.
Yeah.
Totally making it happen. So, and then cuts to Mark. Mark just really does not love his job, as has been shown. He's kind of I do the job, but I don't really care about it guy. And a guy comes in, hey, congratulations on the speed bump. He lowered it by 2 inches, and his coworkers like trying to congratulate him. It's like, Mark's like, this doesn't matter. This whole thing that I just did doesn't matter. And there are days
where your job can literally be measured.
Right. And you're like, oh, that's what I did today.
Yeah.
And then we cut to the hospital where Anne as a good, awesome girlfriend. She's trying to support Andy and the band, and she's handing out flyers, inviting people to come. And she talks to Dr. Harris, who, again, I love Dr. Harris. He's so good. And he says to her, like, oh, well, Andy could have gotten his cast off 2 weeks earlier, but he said there was some important reason why he couldn't, and he'd explain it to me later, and he never explained it. Andy says, I've been serving him hand and foot for this whole time. And Dr. Harris just totally deadpan. That explains it. I love it.
And then his laugh, and then his little laugh at the end too, is just like,
yeah. Oh man, Dr. Harris is so good.
Yeah.
Such a good character. I didn't look up to see who he is, if he's like a writer or something on the show, but yeah, I just think because he comes back again next season. Yeah. Several times throughout the show, actually.
And that's something like super fast that I mean, we don't make a big deal about it, but you and I talked about this when we were talking about this podcast. Parks and Rec, in my mind, has some of the best. I think we came up with tertiary characters, and maybe we even talked about it on the podcast, but like these small characters that keep coming back, and they're so funny, and it builds this world, and they keep bringing them back. And I think they did. I don't know of many shows who have done it as well as Parks and Recreation, at least that I've noticed. I know, like Seinfeld had some reoccurring characters, which is great, but those little reoccurring characters really flesh things out, and you get all these different looks of, humanity and just all the different jokes that can come out of it. So yeah, I love all of these characters. So we'll point them out obviously as we go through, because there are some amazing characters coming up.
Yeah. So, I think The Office had some, like Bob Vance Refrigeration.
Yes.
But it was all related to, we all work in this space.
Right.
And we didn't really get a lot of extra life from people outside of their work. Whereas this is in a small town. And so a small town is going to have all kinds of people who will be in your life all the time. Yeah. Because they live there.
So like in Edmonds here, there's a guy who walks around and he measures the water temperature.
How does he measure the water temperature?
I think he just goes in and kind of checks it out, and then he writes it down on his pad of paper. I think he has a thermometer of some kind.
Right. He does.
But he walks around in cutoff shorts and no shirt. That's another thing that you should know about him. And everybody knows him. He's a town character. It's great. Like he would be in this show, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, and every day he's doing what he can to check the water temperature.
Every day. What a great character.
When you're downtown Edmonds, totally normal.
Yeah.
It's like, he's always here. It's fine. No problem. But when you see this guy fully clothed around town, you're like, I feel like I know you somehow.
Yeah.
And it turns out you do. And he's just at the library entering in his weather data on the internet, because I don't know if he has internet at home. So,
well, and that's
details you learn about this guy.
That's right. And that's what's great about this show, bringing it back to the actual podcast, is that these characters have these lives outside of what they do, but we only see them for this brief moment. And when we see them, like in our towns, we're like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like that's normal. But if you were to visit Pawnee or Edmonds and see this guy, you're like, what a freak. Like this is so bizarre. Why is that allowed? Why is this guy walking around with cutoff shorts and no shirt? It's like, oh, it's fine. And Pawnee had
problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, so many good characters. Yeah, and and when people think about it, like your town that you grew up in or where you live now, you're going to see the same people over and over again. And it's good. It's fun to pay attention and see, like, notice things. And that's really, I think, where comedy comes from, is noticing the absurdity of like normal stuff. And so Parks and Rec does a really good job of noticing the absurdity of all of this.
And maybe that's where I was getting at, is that you get so used to it that what could be perceived as absurd just feels normal. And if you were to think about your town growing up, and you just sat and thought about it, all the people in your neighborhood, that they would probably end up being like really interesting characters. But it's just been so normal. We've been around it for so long. It's just normal to us. So anyway, yeah. Good.
Awesome.
Glad we got that taken care of.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We learn about the show. We learn about our lives. Podcasting.
We learn about each other.
Yeah. So much stuff to learn. Speaking of things to learn, they cut back to the bar and we learn about Andy. Transitions, man. I'm all about segues. We learn about Andy's band and their long history. And this is where we get Andy's band names. And I have a picture of them. I would like to read them. Is that all right with you, Jeremy?
I would love nothing more.
Okay. This is a quote from Andy Dwyer. And I know you could probably just go watch this on Netflix. But I think every time we consult the tomes, it's good to have some things that we say out loud. All right. So the band has had a few different names over the years. When we started, we were Teddy Bear Suicide, but then we changed it to Mouse Rat. Then we were God Hates Figs, Department of Homeland Obscurity, Flames for Flames, Muscle Confusion, Nothing Rhymes with Orange, and Everything Rhymes with Orange, Punch Face Champions, Rad Wagon, Puppy Pendulum, Possum Pendulum, Penis Pendulum, Handrail Suicide, Angel Sack, Just the Tip, Three Skin. Oh, Jet Black Pope. We went back to Mouse Rat, and now we are Scarecrow Boat. God, when I say it out loud, I kind of hate it. So those are the names of the band. Which of those would you say are your favorite names?
I love God Hates Figs. I thought that was really great. The Andy's was one of my favorite ones because you can spell Andy 3 different ways. What was the other one? 2 Doors Down, which I thought was pretty funny because they kind of sound like 3 Doors Down, but yeah, they're not quite as good. How about you?
My favorites are Department of Homeland Obscurity and Radwagon. Radwagon would actually be a pretty awesome name for a band. Like, Radwagon. Like, if you went to a show and like you went to go see, you're like in 1994, you went to go see Pearl Jam, Radwagon would be the opening band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that would just be the way it is. Like, before they blew up, before they were huge, Radwagon, Ribbon Fish, Pearl Jam. Those are like, that's the lineup in Seattle.
Right.
And so, yeah, I love it. So they do the sound check and all this stuff, and Anne comes back at this point, and she is mad because she knows that Andy has been putting off the removal of his cast, and so she's really, really upset. And Andy does everything he can to avoid that conversation. So, but as it starts intertwining between the two scenes, and this is where we come to see Leslie and her meeting with George from Eagleton. And this is right away, as somebody, like as an observer, you realize Leslie's coming at this for one reason. George, when he asks, what kind of movies do you like, is coming at this whole meeting for a whole nother reason. And Leslie does not realize what's going on for a little bit. I don't even know what to say about this other than it's awkward.
Yeah, it's super awkward. And I actually kind of like this trope, if you will, of the joke of withheld information. So he knows that it's a date, but she doesn't. And so as they're talking, the common thread, the things that they're talking about can be construed from two different angles. And I think that's where a lot of the comedy kind of comes from. And you see this used a lot in shows. But it only works until the other person finds out the information, right? So as soon as Leslie figures out that it's a date, that gag is kind of up, and then they have to change it up just a little bit. But yeah, I also thought about it kind of from the side of where if we never found out that her mom, Marlene, had set her up on this date, how would this scene even play out? So like as an audience, we have to know that this is a date, because that makes it awkward, so we have that information, even though Leslie doesn't. And so as soon as she finds out, then she's in on it. And that's when it gets really awkward. And it's like, okay, she could get out. So then they have to ramp up the awkwardness. And that's when he's like, okay, well, anyway. And she feels so sorry for him as he's kind of saying how hard life has been since the divorce, especially on his kids, so not his real kid, his older kids because they're old, but his grandkids, it's been tough on them, which I thought was really funny. Like my adult kids, they don't care that we got divorced, but the grandkids. And so she's like, oh boy. But then I love her reaction because she goes, she's like, she feels sorry for him at this point. She's like, all right, I got to hang out. And then he's like, well, anyway, don't talk about your divorce on the first date. And he grabs her hand, and now she's like, and now it's awkward. She really wants to get out of this date. And at that point, I'm not sure why she doesn't, but I think it's because she still politically wants to get that zoning information from the guy, because she's still,
right.
I think there's a little bit of hope there that she can actually, might help her park. I don't know. What did you think?
Well, I think she felt trapped, first of all. As soon as she realized what's going on, like, I don't know how to get out of this. I've never been in this situation before. What do you do? There's no protocol.
Right.
And so that's part of it. But I do think you're right that she does still want his input on how she can move the park forward, because that's the most important thing in her life right now. I need this park to happen.
Well, and she got put in this situation by her mom, who set her up on this date without telling her. And I think it goes back to kind of talking about, the Tellison Awards and how her mom isn't as good of a person as she really thinks. I mean, and it was a really political thing, because I don't think, I think she was hoping that he wouldn't say that it was a date, but she didn't really care either way. So she didn't take Leslie's feelings into consideration at all when she did this. So I just think that's kind of interesting that her mom, and I think that's why she doesn't get used a lot in the series. But then I had the question, how did Leslie become so optimistic about life? Like, her mom seems to be kind of devious and kind of the worst, so how did Leslie end up being a good person? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth exploring, because there's no way to know. But
well, we do see, though, that this is a trait in Leslie's life very early.
Yeah.
That she wants to help, and she wants to be a part of, political, the political machinery of the town. And, she has these dreams early in her life, and we'll get to that down the road,
right,
about her political aspirations. But I think, regardless of where you are born or what kind of family you're brought up in, there are certain things that are hardwired into people's personalities that can overcome a lot of the weirdness about the world that you're raised in. But one of the things is Leslie is so laser focused on whatever's important to her,
right,
that she probably just disregards everything that her mom did growing up that would be outside of the narrative that Leslie wants to tell.
Well, yeah, and that helps feed into that idea that she is a bit naive to all these other things, because she wasn't exposed to the political machinations of her mom and all these things. I kind of also think, I mean, not to do too much backstory, but because I don't know if this is true or not, but I just kind of envision this little kid who sees her mom as this political figure. She's important. She wants to be like her, but then her mom's so busy that she's not around much. So she's playing, you can just see her playing, instead of playing house, she's playing politician.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting. That would be hard to get other kids to want to play that. I had a hard time just getting Daniel Lorenz around the corner to want to pretend to be Ninja Turtles with me. So, important stuff.
You got to go with what you know.
Exactly. So Leslie and George, as part of the date, I love that as the evening goes on while they're still at the dinner, George asks her again, "What kind of movies do you like?" And then he says, "Oh, senior moment," because this guy is 62 years old and she's in her 30s, and so the fact that her mom is it doesn't matter,
right,
just go have dinner with him. It doesn't matter. Just you need to meet people. You need to get out there, Leslie. So
there's so many old jokes, which I thought they were pretty nice. But when he goes, "Oh no, I think it's going really well," she looks like a young Sandy Duncan. And it's 99% of the people watching won't get that, and it's great. Yeah. And I actually had to look up Sandy Duncan, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know who this is." But it's so great because he's so out of touch. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I know who Sandy Duncan is, but I did not know what Sandy Duncan looked like when she was young.
Yeah,
she's never been young in my lifetime.
Right.
So, All right, so then it comes back to the bar, and this is where we meet some important characters for the future, and learn more about Ron, because Ron is dating his ex-wife Tammy's sister, because the sister also hates Tammy, and we don't know anything about Tammy yet, other than Ron hates her. So
she's
it'll be
the
interesting.
worst.
She's the worst, absolutely the worst. But then we also meet Tom's wife, Wendy. And she's a surgeon. She's very attractive. And Tom does everything he can to make sure everybody knows that by pointing it out when they first are introduced to Wendy. So we're meeting some people's life. And then we also meet April and her companion, Derek, who's gay. But they hang out and they make out sometimes. So April's got a weird life.
Yeah.
Is that Derek or Ben? I didn't catch.
I think it was Derek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ben is Derek's boyfriend.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. The young people.
The young people. It's hard to keep up.
It's hard to keep everyone on track. And Ron comes as he's meeting all these people, and or not Ron. Mark comes meeting all these people. Mark came to this concert alone, and everybody's coupled up except Mark. And so that is one of we've already caught that Mark is unhappy with his work. He walked away from trying to pick up chicks at the bar with Tom in the previous episode. And so Mark is kind of trying to figure out what his life is all about. And in this moment, like nothing's working for him.
Yeah, I think this is the beginning of them really writing him out of the story. I feel like they're setting him up to go question everything. Like he's bored with the girls at the bar, like you said, and now his job, and he's alone. And so now you could easily see him just kind of like, I need to figure out my life and just kind of get out of this situation and make a change. So I think they're really setting up for him to not be around the next bit for the next season.
Right. So they could have written him out right at the end.
They could have,
but they chose not to.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So we'll get there eventually. Yeah. So the band starts playing. Excuse me. The band starts playing Scarecrow Boat at this point, and they are not bad. And in looking up a little bit about the show, they were supposed to just be playing just to like pretend playing, and they were going to put the audio in later. But the band actually sounded good. And so that's all live recording of the band playing for the songs that they sang. So yeah. I thought that was interesting because it's really difficult to do well, to record a live concert, as well as having the dialogue with the actors and all of that. It's difficult. And for a 22-minute show on primetime, might not be worth it, but it sounded good.
Yeah, they're all playing their own instruments, and I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, the bass. Some of these songs, like I would love if they actually released a Scarecrow Boat or Mouse Rat album, with all these songs. That would be awesome. But I don't know why they never. If they did it, I didn't catch it, and if they never did, I don't know why they never did.
Yeah, it seems like a missed opportunity.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so Andy knows that Anne is mad at him, and so one of the things he tries to do is he has an acoustic set where he sings a song dedicated to Anne. The song is called Anne, and it's very obvious that he's making it up on the spot because there are no words other than Anne.
But you gotta hand it to Chris Pratt. He did make that song up himself.
Yeah. So way to go, man. It's really good. I was really proud of him.
So hold on, before we go too far, during this, right before that, right before they get to his song, they cut into a song that says, he's like staying together forever. And it's the Mouse Rat song, and just talk about how you and I were going to stay together forever. And as they do that, they take shots of all of the people, dancing to this song, and none of them stay together.
That's true.
Yeah. So Ron and the sister, they don't stay together. Now I'm trying to think of all the I should have written it down. April and her boyfriend, they don't stay together. Right. Tom and Wendy don't stay together. So I just thought that was interesting. And then even Leslie and her date show up, and obviously they don't stay together either.
Right. And I love the way that Tom talked when George and Leslie show up. The concert's basically over at that point, but the way that Tom introduces George to Wendy, he says, "This is Wendy, my wife. She's my age."
Yes. He's the king of those small slights, right? Like, oh, so good.
I love that so much. But we went a little too far ahead because while Andy is singing his song to Anne, Mark comes over and starts talking to Anne and tries basically to see, like, hey, why are you with Andy? And if you weren't, would you be interested in me? And that does not go well for Anne. She gets real mad at that point as well. So it only makes things worse for her. For Anne, she just gets more and more angry as the night goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where we are introduced to the rock ballad of the ages, The Pit. I fell in it, The Pit. You fell in it, The Pit. We all fell in it, The Pit. Man, what a good song. I would totally listen to that song and enjoy it. Because, yeah, I don't know. I love it. It's so good.
Yes.
Yeah. So then George and Leslie show up and that whole scene happens. Concert's over. Anne is mad. She wants to go. But Andy is trying to do everything he can, again, to stay away from that conflict with Anne. And so he's like, we got to debrief with the band. And then Leslie's like, oh, we missed it. Can you do an encore? And he's like, yes, that's a great idea. But Anne prevails and they leave.
And I love too how they had packed everything up. And I think it's Burley, the one of the guitar players, like when he says, all right, get everything back out. And everything, I've never been in a band, but everything I've ever seen on television and shows, moving gear is a big headache. But
it's the worst.
It's the worst. But Burley's reaction, he's just got his beer and he just kind of looks at him. He's like, all right, yeah, that's good. Yeah, good idea. Let's do that. Just that little head nod. Like, yeah, okay.
Well, this band goes through so much with Andy Dwyer. Like, they endure him in so many ways. But they think about, like, they haven't done a show for as long as he's been in those casts.
Right, it's true.
It is one of those things where it's like, well, we do like playing together, so let's play some more. Why not?
Yeah, Mousetrap the band has its own arc, which is just so fantastic.
Man, these characters, this it's so good.
Yeah.
So they leave. Everybody starts to leave. George falls asleep, and Tom asks, "Is he asleep or is he dead? Is he asleep or is he dead?" And then he wakes up, like, "I should go home." They do a talking head. He's like, "I don't think I'm going to see Leslie again." There was no spark there,
right?
So, good for everybody there.
Yeah, it was her fault. That's what it was.
Right. Yeah. And then people are leaving and they ask, like, Wendy asks Tom, how did Leslie meet that guy? And he used to read to her at the senior center.
Yeah.
He has Benjamin Button disease and all kinds of funny things. He's actually 6. But then Ron says, and this is where we get a little bit more picture of Ron, who wants to watch me climb a tree?
Yes.
And they all said, yeah, let's do it. So we're starting to get a picture of Ron as, like, the man's man who can climb a tree, who is going to be strong. And I was even just walking through my Netflix trying to find this episode because we had watched ahead with the kids. I saw Ron's Pyramid of Manliness. I was like, oh man, there's so much good stuff coming our way.
Yeah.
So they all leave, but Mark and Leslie, they stick around the bar. They have beers together, and basically, like, bar closes, and then they go get beers to go and go to the pit.
Well, no, that was, I've never heard of beers to go, and it must be an Indiana thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't drink alcohol. I've never really been to a bar. Like, all of these things, like, there's a whole culture I don't know.
Yeah, like, I know that there's, like, drive-through margarita stands in, like,
yes, I've seen
South.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember visiting my grandparents in Arizona years ago, and you could walk into, like, a 7-Eleven and there'd be alcohol, like an alcohol aisle, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole different world. And up here in the nanny state of Washington, there's so much control. No, there isn't. They legalized weed. It's crazy. Everywhere smells terrible. The other day we're driving home. No, this is what happened. Okay, I got it. This is not Parks and Rec, but it's by what could be considered a pit. It's a cemetery. We're driving past the cemetery.
Those are they're people pits.
Exactly, a whole bunch of them. We're driving past the cemetery, and it smells like weed, like so bad. And the kids are like, "What is that?" I'm like, that's the smell of our region now. That's marijuana. It's awful. Don't ever smoke it because you'll never get away with it. Everyone can smell it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so we drive, and we're gone for hours, Jeremy. We come back past the cemetery again. Still smells like marijuana. It was so bad. So anyway, that has nothing to do with anything other than marijuana smells terrible. So
I always wondered too, like it kind of smells like, you ever driven over it like by a dead skunk?
Yeah.
And it's very similar. It's a very similar smell. And now I look back on my childhood and I wonder how many times we passed people who had been smoking and my parents said, "Oh man, smells like somebody ran over a skunk."
Yeah. Is that just a euphemism? Because I've never actually smelled a skunk. Is that just something our old hippie parents said?
Man, I don't know.
Try to get us to not think about weed.
Right. I don't want to have that. What's that smell? Well, it's obvious. It's a skunk. It's like, oh, that's gross. All right. Conversation over.
Right. It's like, gross. Better get some tomato juice, right? That's what I saw on the Disney show. You bathe in tomato juice.
The Disney show?
I don't know. It was on some Disney program. So
how to remove stains and smells? The Walt Disney way.
Exactly. What you want to do is cut off your head and cryogenically freeze it for the future. Then you won't smell anything.
Problem solved.
Problemo solved. Okay, so Mark and Leslie, beers to go. They go to the pit. And they start talking about the park, and they start doing all kinds of like daydreaming. Part of it is, to show how drunk they are. You know, Mark throws his beer bottle in the pit, trying to get in a shopping cart. Leslie tries to throw hers in, and she misses the pit entirely. It goes behind her. So they're clearly drunk. They are wasted.
Well, yeah, because she would never do that.
No.
Like she would never throw garbage. I mean, she even tries to say, hey, and that's why Mark is kind of the worst, because he's trying to get her to do something she normally wouldn't do. Even as small. I mean, he even makes a comment, it's just one beer bottle. What could it matter? Which just sums up his whole kind of his character. Like he just doesn't see the good. Like nothing is fixable. And Leslie, I love the fact that they wrote in, like she doesn't just throw it in, she misses. And it sets up a joke. You missed, and you couldn't even hit a pit. But it also kind of saves her because even though she acts out on it, it doesn't actually go in. So it goes behind her. I don't know. Maybe I read into it too much, but I like the fact that she didn't throw it into the pit. She didn't succumb to that. And even if she wanted to, she couldn't. Like, it's like the universe was like, no. And the bottle flies behind her. You know, I don't know.
Maybe. Or she's just really drunk.
She could be really drunk. I don't know.
So there's a couple reads on this.
Let me have this one.
So they start dreaming about the pit and sitting on the little bench thing there that is left over. I don't know where that came from. When you like think about the stuff that's at the pit, like where did those two bench seats come from? But I don't want to think too much about the garbage.
Set design. I think the set design brought it in.
Yeah, they're going to have to sit down sometime.
Yeah.
Oh, let's bring these in. But make sure they look like garbage. So Anne and Andy, who live next door to the pit, are fighting. And Andy finally tells the truth about why he didn't, because I just really like it when you serve me food.
and the way he delivered that line, the way he said it, it's almost as though he was expecting her to think like that was okay. Like that was his, right. Like, I only did it because I like that you served me food. Like,
right. Yeah.
No, not acceptable.
Yeah. Still wrong. And I love Anne's response. Take a walk on your overly healed legs and let me think about this relationship. Overly healed.
Love
So
it.
he goes outside and he sees that Mark and Leslie are out there, and Mark and Leslie start kissing, and Leslie says, no, I don't want this to happen this way again. And Mark's like, it's not a big deal. Again, Mark's whole thing is like, nothing is a big deal, but it is a big deal to Leslie. And she's starting to develop some personal agency here. She was already set up on a date with an old man that she didn't want. And now she's in this situation where, she has some kinds of feelings for Mark, but she does not want to have any kind of encounter where like it's meaningless. She wants some kind of meaning in her relationships. And so she says no to Mark, and he gets up and he's drunk and he falls in the pit. We just sang a song about this.
Whoa.
And I love how they actually like play in to the song, the end of the show here, the music for the pit. Like that's the song that they are ending the season on. Andy's not the only one falling in pits. We all fall in the pit. So, and so Andy goes and tells Anne he needs help. You better go check it out. You're a nurse. He's probably hurt pretty bad.
Laughing the whole way as he does it.
Yes. And then he just jumps onto the couch and is like right back where he started. And Anne is responding. She's going outside. We don't see what's going to happen there. But that's the end of the season. 6 episodes.
Yeah, there was no post scene. There was no. Yeah, there was just there's no cap.
No, it just ended. And when I said earlier that this could be a good ending to the series if they didn't get picked up, because it just like Leslie is like, no, I'm gonna build this park. This is gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then we also, the agency that we see in her to say no, even though she was feeling bad about herself, she was feeling bad about her relationships. It was just not a good night for Leslie, but she was still able to say like, no, this is important. These relationships are important to me, and I don't want something that's meaningless.
And too, I mean, it really helps develop her character because she, is finally going to stand up. She stands up to Andy and says, go, I need to think about this. And then also she lays into Mark as he's trying to hit on her too. So she's these women are finally like standing up to these things are like obviously these flaws or, these things they haven't been able to kind of get over. And it sets them up to be free now to really develop their character and not get hung up on waiting around for these other people, which I thought was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, season 1 is in the bag.
Yeah.
And, it started off so rough. But already 6 episodes in, it's like, wow, they've got to figure it out. This is good. This is going to be a good show.
Yeah.
And it is, and it only gets better. Jocelyn, as I was scrolling through to find the episode, she wanted to like just look at all the pictures. Jocelyn is my daughter, in case the internet doesn't know that.
I knew that.
And so she was scrolling through, and so there's this episode with a time jump in it, and she's like, "What happened here? What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, we're just gonna have to wait and see." It's so good. It's so good. So I just get more. The more I think about this show, the more excited I am to be able to share it with people, to talk about it. So we are looking forward to more of these conversations.
Yeah, and really just being able to focus on not just the episode synopsis, but kind of connecting all those dots and seeing how those relationships change people and bringing those characters and the callbacks. It's so well thought out. And now that that's why this episode was so important, because it launches the series into its own direction and sets up these characters to be able to do all the amazing things that Parks and Rec becomes, that we all know and love.
Right. Yeah. So, next season, big changes.
Big
changes are coming. We're going to go on even more interesting journeys with our friends from Pawnee. They aren't going to have a ton of, super like flashy casting or anything. There are some treasures that will show up as guests throughout the season. We'll learn more about Jerry and Donna that we haven't really gotten to know. Ron is going to become a fully realized and wonderful character in just a little bit. And I'm so excited to talk about Ron. He's the best. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else that we need to cover before we sign off for this? We're already at 50 minutes of Parks and Recreation.
This is the season finale, so I think that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think
good.
we covered a lot of the trivia, like, the Chris Pratt improvised all those band names and they played their own instruments and all those things. So, yeah.
There is one thing that we should definitely highlight. This is Mike Schur's first directorial work on this program.
Yeah.
So, so this, like, the Mike Schur universe is full of goodness. And here we have an evidence of his work as the director and creator and co-writer and all that with this program. So,
and did you see that when I read this, that he was supposed to be playing Mose on The Office, and he was given 1 day to prep for the directing of this episode, and so he had to turn it down, and that's why Dwight, instead of Mose in that episode, they show his friend Rolf, who had do you remember Rolf?
Oh yeah,
Rolf is awesome.
Awful.
So but he's a great terrible character, and when we'll get down that road, in a couple of years. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that these shows have actually really affected each other, and then characters get created because, like, all right, what do we do? So anyway, yeah,
it is amazing that Mike Schur was involved in The Office and Parks and Recreation at the same time.
Right.
Like, that's a huge amount of work. And so I'm just blown away by this, the creativity that was happening in this production company with these people, making such great shows. So
I call it a win if my kids have lunches packed, so I don't even know how you juggle 2 full shows. So
he probably pays somebody to pack his kids' lunches.
Okay. See,
so
I'm learning. I get it now.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
yeah.
You just got to, I read a book by Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Work Week. You just got to outsource the things you don't want to do. It's easy.
Oh, you still have to do them? I thought you just worked for 4 hours and then.
No.
So, yeah, okay.
That book sold a lot of copies based on lies. So,
well,
anyway, we don't want to lie to our people that are listening to this. And we already said we should probably wrap up. So,
okay.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, cool. It was, I love talking about this show, and it was great to chat with you about episode 6. So I'll see you later.
See ya in season 2.
Season dose. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
Bye.